Okay, first things first, what a game by the Capitals in game number 3. I've said since back in the Columbus series that this postseason just has a different feel to it for the Capitals, as we've seen them do things that they'd never done before, that no team in the NHL's 100-year history had ever done before. Things like coming back to beat Columbus after dropping the first 2 games in crushing fashion in overtime on home ice. And the recurring theme here for these Capitals is resiliency, and that was on display again last night in Pittsburgh. The Caps came back twice in the game from being down 2-1 and then 3-2, and then knowing that us Caps fans do not want any more overtime, they found a way to win the game with a minute left in regulation and send all of those Pittsburgh mouth breathers home pissed off. Feels good, doesn't it? Shout out to the Penguins fans telling Alex Ovechkin that he's #1 after he scored the game-winning goal. It's always sunny in Philadelphia, and it's always classy in Pittsburgh. The Ovechkin goal gave the Caps a 2-1 series lead over the Penguins, which is something that the Caps never had over the Pens in either of the last 2 postseasons. If you remember, we went down 3-1 in both of those series, and although we made a valiant effort in coming back both times, it's definitely preferable to be leading the series instead. More breathing room for things like a bad bounce that costs you a game, etc. When you're down 3-1 in the series and something like that happens, it's the end of the world. Now, not so much. We do have a little bit of breathing room, so take a deep breath, Caps fans. It feels nice having the upper hand for once, even if we definitely want to build on it sooner rather than later. Now, there is a lot to unpack from this game. I will start with the actual hockey that was being played. John Carlson got the first goal in the game. I said before the series started that he was going to have to be a big factor in the series if the Caps were to win. Carlson led all NHL defensemen in points this season. He's an advantage that we have over the Penguins, as they don't have anyone on their blue line who is as good as him. He's better than Chris Letang, and that's an advantage in this series that we can take advantage of, and we have taken advantage of to this point. Carlson leads all defensemen in postseason scoring with 10 points. He's been phenomenal. You almost think that we would have been better off last year if we had never gotten Shattenkirk and rather just let Carlson do the heavy lifting on the back end, but maybe Carlson wasn't quite ready for it last year. Whether that is the case or not, who cares, because he is certainly ready now, and it is making a difference in this postseason. And the second thing that I want to talk about is the secondary scoring, as we're actually getting some this postseason. You remember in last year's playoffs, the Caps had exactly 0 goose egg goals from their bottom 6 forwards in the series against the Penguins. In this year's Pittsburgh-Washington series, however, we're only 3 games in, and we've already got 3 goals from our bottom 6 forwards, as well as many assists. Lars Eller, for example, hasn't scored in this series yet, but he's already got 3 assists through the first 3 games of the series. So that all being said, when the game is on the line, who do you want with the puck on their stick? Well, the greatest goal scorer of all time, obviously, and that's exactly what we got in this game with Alex Ovechkin burying the game-winning goal with just 1 minute and 7 seconds remaining in regulation. Now, if you're the Penguins and there's a minute left in a tie game, absolute worst case scenario, who are the 2 worst players that you could possibly give up a 2-on-1 to in this scenario? Perhaps the 2 guys who have combined for literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of goals together since coming into the league and being put on a line together over a decade ago? Yes, that would be perfect human Nicklas Backstrom and Russian goal-scoring machine Alex Ovechkin. Yeah, those 2 guys. Maybe you've heard of them. Anyways, Olli Mata and Chris Letang had not heard of them. Either that or they were just deciding to live dangerously and see what happens. But either way, the Penguins gave up a 2-on-1 to the 2 worst possible guys that you could give up a 2-on-1 to, and of course they scored, so it's game over. Now, Alex Ovechkin is seriously having a postseason for the ages. Should the Caps advance past the Penguins, and even further than that. These are Conn Smythe-worthy numbers that he's putting up. He leads the league in postseason goals with 8 goals now in 9 playoff games, and he's already got 13 points. And I go back to last season and the season before that as well. The Caps had an ultra-deep team for the last 2 years, and so they weren't relying on Ovechkin as much in the goal-scoring department. There were plenty of good forwards on the team for the last 2 years, so Ovechkin was playing less as the team spread out the ice time evenly to keep everybody fresh. And now, while that is a good idea in theory, those other forwards, no matter how good, no matter how reliable, they still were not Alex Ovechkin. Nobody can impact a game the way that he can, and so I say again, when the game is on the line, when the season is on the line, who do you want on the ice? It's an easy answer. And in this year's playoffs, that's made a big difference, is that Alex Ovechkin is on the ice, and he is on the ice a lot. And I'm just going to come out and say it, the guy is an absolute beast. I don't think he ever gets tired. Last night's game-winning goal was a perfect example. He'd been on the ice and defending in his own zone for well over a minute already. Anyone else would be completely gassed at that point and just forgo the 2-on-1, just forget about it. That was at that point developing from the Caps blue line. Most people would just go for a line change instead and get ready for overtime, but not Ovi. He busts his ass up the ice and still has enough gas left in the tank to focus enough to be able to knock a puck out of midair and into the net for the game-winning goal. Captain Clutch. And don't get me wrong, depth, obviously, always a good thing. And the Caps actually have good depth again this year, even after losing so many players to salary cap constraints last summer. But the Caps are a better, more dangerous team when Alex Ovechkin is playing a lot. He's a better, more dangerous player than anyone else that can be put on the ice, and the Caps are a better, more dangerous team, therefore, when they are relying on him more, because he always delivers. Just look at this season. The Caps were handcuffed by the salary cap in the offseason, and they lost a lot of key players and a lot of goals from their lineup over the summer. And so General Manager Brian McClellan and Coach Barry Trotz, they both talked to Ovechkin over the summer, and they said, hey, we're going to need you to be really big for us next season. We need 50-goal OV back again if we're even going to make the playoffs. And so what does Ovi do? He comes back and he gets himself on a 50-goal pace again, and he leads the entire league in scoring at age 32, which, by the way, is something that had not been done since Phil Esposito did it in the 1974-75 season. He was the best player on the ice for the Caps all season long, and all of those goals that the Caps lost to free agency and salary dump trade in the offseason, Ovechkin pretty much made up for all of those on his own. So yes, given that he never really seems to get tired or slow down in any way, since he can play that many minutes without his level of play suffering at all, the Caps are always going to be a better team with him on the ice, and it is showing in this postseason. Now that we've talked about the hockey, let's talk about the extracurricular activities that went on in this game. Whether you love or hate Tom Wilson, and Caps fans love him, you cannot deny that he has had a massive impact on this series. He's living rent-free in the Penguins' heads, and he's got them scared to make a play with the puck because they're afraid of getting drilled. He's contributed some offense of his own, but more importantly, he creates a lot of space for guys like Ovechkin and Kuznetsov, because, like I said, the Penguins are scared of getting blasted, so they've been panicking with the puck and turning it over. Perfect, beautiful example of this was on Ovechkin's game-winning goal in Game 3. Olli Määttä is scared of getting drilled, so he throws the puck away, and he throws it right to Nicklas Backstrom, who says thank you very much, and carries the puck down the entire length of the ice before feeding a great pass to Ovechkin for the goal. That play started because Määttä saw Thomas the choo-choo train barreling down on him, and he panicked, and he made a bad play. So Wilson, he does so many things well. He's been great on the penalty kill, which we've become accustomed to over the last couple of seasons, and his physical play. as always, really, really important. He's really been wearing down the Penguins with all of his physicality, and like I said, even more than that, he is so in their heads that he's got them chasing him around the ice instead of them actually trying to play hockey. So Wilson's been doing a great job, and like it or not, Penguins fans, he has been doing it within the rules, which is what makes the NHL's decision today even more infuriating. And you know, I had a lot of really carefully thought out analysis about this hit, but since the NHL set the precedent earlier today, I'm just going to wing it, you know? Just like the Department of Player Safety does. Damn the facts, I'll throw caution to the wind, and I'm just going to make it up as I go along, just like George Peros does. So for those who missed it, Wilson has been given a 3-game suspension for what all 4 officials on the ice and the off-ice official and every analyst on television and in print had deemed as a clean shoulder-to-shoulder check. And so here are my problems with this suspension, and there are many problems. Number 1, it is deemed clean by all 4, count them, 4 officials, and when you go to look at the video evidence afterwards, the video confirms what the officials saw, a very hard but clean hit where Aston Reese's shoulder is the initial point of contact, but somehow overnight, the hit goes from being clean and undeserving of even a 2-minute penalty to suddenly being worthy of a 3-game suspension. Unless there's some sort of magical suspension fairy that we're all unaware of that comes by at night and picks up your dollar from under your pillow and leaves you with a suspension for the opposition instead, then I'm not really sure what's going on here. Except that we do know what's going on here. And you know what? I got told by a Penguins fan today that I sound like I should be wearing a tinfoil hat with my conspiracy theories. Well, you know what? Try this one on for size. Hey, there we go. Looks good, doesn't it? Suits me. So here we go. Let's look at the facts. And we'll start right here with this Tom Wilson hit. And before we dive right into the hit itself, I just have to say I've never seen a guy who's been labeled by a rival team as a so-called goon put so much effort into making absolute sure that his hits are clean. Tom Wilson works on this so much. He makes a concentrated effort to make sure that he's not doing anything wrong when he hits a guy. He keeps his feet planted on the ground. He makes sure that he gets body-on-body contact first. And you know, the hit on Aston Reese, according to the rule book, is a clean hit. And this is where the problem lies with the suspension, but I'll get to that in a minute. The hit, if you slow it down, which we here in the year 2018 have the benefit of high-resolution video as well as many different camera angles, you can clearly see that the shoulder is the initial point of contact. He gets the shoulder first, and you can see that Wilson is looking right at Aston Reese's shoulder. He's making sure, on purpose, like I said, a concentrated effort, that he gets the guy's shoulder first. His feet are firmly planted on the ground, both of them, when he first makes contact with Aston Reese. If your feet leave the ice after the collision as a result of the momentum and the impact, that doesn't make it a dirty hit. And Penguins fans, I understand that most of you have only been fans since 2016, 2017, somewhere around that time frame, but come on. These things are things that you've got to know, and especially before you decide to go full keyboard warrior against people who've actually played this beautiful sport for their entire lives. And I get it. Penguins fans want to spend all of their time discussing Tom Wilson because it's a nice distraction from the fact that they were outshot 10-3 in the third period when the game was on the line. That's fine. No Penguins fans want to talk about or even acknowledge that because God forbid you just actually got outplayed at a key time in the series. But stop your whining, please. It's giving the entire hockey world a headache. Now, back to the suspension. The problem here, like I said, is that by the NHL's own rule book, this was a clean hit. The rulebook currently states that you can make contact with a player's head and even cause severe damage and or injury, and it is legal so long as the head is not the initial point of contact, or in other words, so long as there is body-on-body contact first, which there definitely was in this case. And we already covered how it wasn't charging, as you were allowed to have your feet leave the ice as a result of the impact after that initial contact is made. So, if the NHL wants to change the way that this rule is written, which, by the way, I think they should, then they can do that in the off-season. But what they can't do is rewrite it in the middle of the frickin' playoffs, in the middle of a series, which is exactly what they've done here by suspending Wilson. They did not suspend him according to their own rule book because their own rule book would not allow for him to be suspended for this hit. So that is the problem, and that's why so many people are so pissed. Tom Wilson, he's been throwing hits according to the NHL's own rulebook, and so how is he to know that the NHL is suddenly going to change its mind, mid-series, mind you, on what's legal and what's not? I'm sure that he was not sent a memo on a rule change, and it's bullshit that they changed the rules all of a sudden in the middle of a series, and it just so happens to favor the Penguins, just as it always does. You can't bend your own rule or flat out change the rule just because Mike Sullivan and Sidney Crosby and probably Mario Lemieux all got together and decided to whine about it. This is exactly the type of bullshit from the league that has fans of all of the other 30 teams in the league saying the fix is in, and the league favors the Penguins. Mario has Bettman in his back pocket, etc. People are saying it because it's true. There's been so much evidence, too much evidence to ignore at this point, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And when somebody tries to tell me that the league is a neutral party, stop. Please stop. It's too much. And what about the Penguins fans whining that Tom Wilson is such a dirty player? Oh, hello there, Pot. Meat kettle. You've got Captain Crybaby whining over there that the league has to do something and start handing out supplemental discipline, etc., which to me is just kind of like the ultimate irony. Sidney Crosby crying for more supplemental discipline. This from the guy who never gets so much as a slap on the tit for any of the bullshit that he pulls. There was the time he decided that Mark Mathot did not need his finger anymore. There was the time that he decided that Ryan O'Reilly did not need his nuts anymore. There was the time he played a fucked up version of Hippity Hop with Subban's head on the ice. And there was this in game number 3 against our very own Capitals when he had a temper tantrum and spat at Evgeny Kuznetsov and Tom Wilson. And so many more. Really too many to even insert the video clips. I would have no more space left on my laptop. That's a nice poster boy that you've got there, NHL. Really nice. And boy, I already knew that Crosby sucks and swallows, but now we know that he spits too. I wonder how much of Gary Bettman's DNA was in that gob of spit that Sid fired at Kuznetsov during game number 3. I really don't want to know. But anyways, this is the type of trash that we are up against. And the cherry on top of the hypocritical Sunday was Chris Letang giving us all advice on how to be classy on Wednesday morning. Yes, the same Chris Letang who tried to break Ovechkin's ankle with a slash after Ovechkin scored to win the game. That Chris Letang. So you will excuse me if I don't want to take lessons on being classy from Christopher fucking Letang, of all people. That would be like taking lessons on how not to be gay by Elton John. Anyways, the Caps will have to plug away without a piece of the top line in Tom Wilson. But like I've said over and over again, this is a different Caps team than in years past. They're resilient, they're finding ways to win, and there's a lot of consistency in their game, as evidenced obviously by the fact that they have won 6 of their last 7 games overall. And when's the last time you could find a Washington Capitals team that had won 6 of 7 games in the playoffs? Go ahead, I'll wait. You look it up. We'll be here a while. But that's what I'm talking about. This postseason has a different feeling to it for the Caps, and they're also 4-0 on the road so far in these playoffs, and they will look to continue that on Thursday night. Until then, try not to pick a fight with any Penguins fans, and I will see you all on Thursday.